past year, there has been a lot of debate with the decision of a new Waitrose being built in the city of Guildford in Surrey. The controversy began over the decision to build the site on a daycare centre for the elderly, next door to accommodation for them, which was also knocked down.
I think the issue isn't really about the necessity of a Waitrose in Guildford. I think the issue is about the vacuum that's created by the winding down of health and social care services. But for me, I think, as a person who's worked in the voluntary sector, constructing programmes to fill the gaps in health and social care services, one becomes extremely aware of the decline in those services.
Until recently, this was where North Place Day Centre and Victoria Court used to offer services, support and shelter to the elderly. Although Guildford City Council did offer a new place for residents to go, some have argued that this new site is just not appropriate due to its location and the surrounding areas.
The place wasn't very big and certainly could do with improvements. Why they couldn't have made that into a much bigger community centre. I mean, for instance, now if an older person goes into town, where do they actually go if they want to sit down?
For instance, North Place had a hairdresser, it had a chiropodist, and it had bathing facilities, which for a lot of older people is extremely important because A, they can't bathe themselves properly, can't get in and out of baths. So there's a very friendly family atmosphere which I don't think you get at Park Barn, and I think they've just ripped the heart out of that side of Guildford.
A recent report by Help the Aged states that more than 1 million people say they often or always feel lonely. The charity found that more than 1/3 of old people in the UK, including half of women aged over 65, now live alone. And figures released in 2008 state that over 500,000 pensioners only leave their house once a week. Similar cases to this show that relocating elderly people to new sites can have severe effects. Yvonne Hossag is an experienced solicitor in this field. We travelled to Kettering, Northamptonshire to find out a bit more about the work that she's been doing to help elderly people in the UK.
We thought, anecdotally, that there were health effects if you move old people. So there were 41 of them, and I looked in the obituary columns of the local paper to see who died and when, and to keep a record. And 15 out of 41 of them died within a year.
It doesn't seem to me to be entirely appropriate that we support that process, that we actually think it's okay for a day centre for elderly people to just be closed, not to bat an eyelid, and see some large supermarket chain take its place.
Another site that was closed was Riverside Cafe. This site was also in the town centre. Although it was a better alternative, the numbers going were not as high as expected.
The only trouble I think with Riverside from an older person's point of view was having to approach it down that long tunnel which had no doors in it and no windows. From Friary Street to get to the river was quite a longish walk in quite a dark enclosed area, and that might have put people off a little.
It's women over 80, single women, either never married or have been widowed, actually feel loneliness is an important aspect for them. And somewhere like the Riverside, especially, or even North Place, somewhere where you could drop in, does have a role in actually providing a social life.
It means now that people who used to go to the Riverside or North Place Day Centre are staying at home, which is causing isolation. Now that in itself is dreadful because it has a knock-on effect with their mental and physical well-being.
In the recent budget announcement by the coalition government, there will be a cut in tax allowances for those over the age of 64, which will lead to up to 5 million middle-class pensioners worse off. In light of this, it could make it even harder for these elderly people to leave their homes.
Being isolated cuts you off from society. It makes you feel very vulnerable, and you're reliant on all sorts of things like social service team, national health and things like that, which again is increasing the expenditure.
There are several charities and other companies that are providing a lot of help and support for the elderly people across the UK. However, recent cuts to funding for sites like North Place are making the jobs these charities do harder every day.
I set up a national charity called Elderly People in Crisis, and my view was that all I had to do was to explain what would happen to the people if you closed a care home. And when people knew, of course they wouldn't do it, because it hurts people terribly and it kills them.
The closure of these sites doesn't just affect the people that go to these places, it causes the workers of these sites to lose their jobs.
Well, North Place closing meant my job finishing, and there was no room for me at Rex House. So I felt very, very angry because I felt that the council had let everybody down.
There's a small amount of money from local government budgets in terms of town councils that is allocated to health and social care projects.
When you are a government, whether local or central, and you have a budget and you need to administer it, you can panic and think, I'm not going to be able to do this properly. And you can make the decision to cut where it's not going to hurt your voting.
Community is very important. Whatever else you're trying to develop, you have to keep a sense of community and people with each other. You know, I think that's part of it really. The big society thing is all about people caring for people. Well, a lot of that feeling seems to have gone out of public life.
I was really angry that all the residents at Victoria Court were having to be moved all over the county, wherever they could find them a place. And that was the final straw for the elderly and older people in Guildford, because they'd closed Riverside and now they were closing North Place, which is extremely popular, even though the council said that it wasn't.
Having had places closed both in Guildford and other towns across the UK, the places that are still up and running need to be kept in good condition and offer the highest of services.
How much of your life would it take you to do it? And I said 3 hours. And she said, then can't you give 3 hours of your life to help these helpless people? So I was shamed into doing it. And now 15 years later I'm still doing it. So a lady was leaning over the side of her chair with dribble coming down her face. Another lady in a pink cardigan was wandering backwards and forwards. Another lady came up to Ellie and said, "What's your name, darling?" And she said, "Eleanor." And this lady stood in the middle of the lounge and sang a bizarre song that she'd made up with Ellie's name in it. So when we got outside, I said, "Were you bothered by the dotty old people, darling?" And she said, "Actually, Mummy, they all have names. The lady who was dribbling, her name is Clarice, but she likes to be called Clary. And the lady in the pink cardigan, her name's Lily. And the lady who sang to me is Evelyn. Did you not know that they all had names, Mummy?" And once she said that, I realised that, of course, if they had names, then they were people. And if they were people, then they had the capacity to suffer. And if they were people who had the capacity to suffer and couldn't do anything to help themselves, then it is our duty, your duty and my duty, to do what we can to help. And that changed my life.
It's getting near dawn, when lights close the tired eyes. I'll soon be with you, my love.